Well, hello there, you good people.
Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday.
Just checking a couple of things here. My gosh, technical difficulties. We need a producer. I got to fly Daniel in from Slovakia to take over the controls. Hello, you good people, friends, lovers. Thank you for joining us. This is 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir. I'm Robert.
Yo, I'm Amy.
And you know who you are. Thank you so much for joining us on this fine Sunday, November 6th, 2022, the 310th day of this, your best year yet. You've got 55 days left to make it the greatest year. 49 days until Christmas, 18 days until Thanksgiving. Hope you've got that turkey. Unless you're going fresh, although turkeys are hard to get right now. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking we get the fresh one early in the week.
Yeah, we need to get it tomorrow.
Yeah, because 7 days until GLOW, Great Lakes Objectivists, Thanksgiving. If you are going to be in Southeast Michigan, reach out to us. We may well have a place at the table for you. And there are just 359 days left until Halloween. So there we go. Let's see. I'm just bringing up my chat here, making sure everything is looking copacetic, whatever that actually means. And on this date, in 1860, I'm sorry, just need a quick refresh here. There we are. Okay.
Yeah, looking good.
Looking good, especially,
looking good.
Well, because Petya is with us, and Jim is with us, and Jennifer is on board. Speaking of Jennifer, by the way, we're going to be talking fast. You're going to be listening fast because we got to wrap up before the end of the hour when Yaron Brook comes on and gives us the midterm election update.
Yes.
So on this date in 1860, Abraham Lincoln, Honest Abe, was elected president of these United States. Well, if you're listening in the United States, but the United States, he was the first Republican to ever win the presidency. Mm-hmm. I think that meant something different back in 1860 than it does now.
Most certainly it did.
Now, earlier this year, Amy and I had the privilege of visiting the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. The site is magnificent in many ways. The sculpture, oh my gosh, the building, the view of the Washington Monument across the National Mall.
I was even interviewed by NBC.
Amy was interviewed. We don't know where that aired.
I don't know
we
if
never did track that down
or not, but I gave him my,
what was the question again? What does liberty mean to you?
Something like that, or what does freedom mean to you?
What does freedom mean to you?
And do you still love America, or do you like America? And I said, yeah, of course I love America.
Oh, America. That's my girl. Incidentally, I've always wondered, why do they call it the National Mall? If you don't know, it's the greens, it's the property between the White House and the Lincoln Memorial. You've got the Washington Monument there. It turns out the name was derived from that of the mall in London. So a similar expanse of property with government buildings and other important buildings bordering it, which during the 1700s was a fashionable promenade near Buckingham Palace, upon which the city's elite strolled.
Well.
Now, the Mall of London, in turn, began as a field for playing Pall Mall. No, not the cigarette brand. Well, you got to be old to remember that one. But no, Pall Mall, Pallmall, which is a precursor to croquet.
Oh, nice.
And the mall in Pall Mall referred to the mallets. Think of croquet. Croquet mallets. So the National Mall, on which resides, the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Monument, at the end of which is the White House, is all about mallets?
Mm-hmm.
Who'd have thought?
Let's bring croquet back to the mall.
Let's bring croquet back to the National Mall.
And any other malls out there that are actually commerce-based and croquet, we can play there. We're probably going to be visiting Santa at one of our larger malls here in the Metro Detroit area, the 12 Oaks Mall.
Yes, we told you the story of the disappointing Santa last year.
That was a 12 Oaks Mall, wasn't it?
It was.
Oh,
it was.
We should go to
the
Laurel
fake
Park
Santa.
Place, then.
Yeah, we'll go to Laurel Park Place. We'll probably go to both. We'll got to see if they replaced this charlatan, this
we'll have to go.
faker.
Yeah, he was like the 12 Oaks Mall Santa was like, well, you can't fix stupid.
Yeah.
Like,
what a charmer.
Is that really how Santa talks? No.
Oh, no. He was a fake Santa.
Yes.
He was not the real Santa. Now, within the Lincoln Memorial, beautiful sculpture. You know, Amy, you were saying, even though Lincoln is sitting down in this sculpture,
yes,
he's rendered so beautifully. He's got such enormous presence.
And there's movement. I mean, if you've ever seen a sculpture with, movement that is implied, and obviously it's not just, I mean, it's just so very beautiful. And on top of that, the great achievement of this particular sculpture was he's sitting down, and yet you see his clothing with a kind of like a flowing movement to it, and his hands, they look like they're about to move. I mean, it's just really amazing.
It really is magnificent. Now, before the OCON of this year, which was in Washington, D.C., I hadn't been to Washington, D.C. as a tourist since I was a kid. We went there in the late 1900s to protest against William Jefferson Clinton, but I hadn't actually done the tourism thing. Oh, that sounds kind of lame. I hadn't actually toured Washington, D.C. Since I was so young, I hardly remembered it. If you go to Washington, D.C., there are 1,000 things you must see, but the Lincoln Memorial absolutely has to be on your list.
Yeah, and by the way, that's the sculpture of the Abraham Lincoln Memorial is Daniel Chester French.
Yes.
FYI.
Magnificent. Of course, I had to read out loud the Gettysburg Address when I was there. It's written on one of the walls. There are two walls. There are kind of anterooms on either side of the main monument and the sculpture. And then on one side, you have the Gettysburg Address written in stone. And the other side is the second inaugural address, which was too long for me to read out loud. But the Gettysburg Address really should be read like the greatest poetry. It should be read out loud if you can get through it without choking up. I did choke up a little bit.
Yes.
So
Yes, you did.
excerpted from online sources here. Lincoln, a Kentucky-born lawyer and former Whig, no, not the hair, W-H-I-G, former Whig representative to Congress, first gained national stature during his campaign from Stephen Douglas of Illinois for a U.S. Senate seat in 1858. And let me just skip forward here. By the time of Lincoln's inauguration on March 4th, 1861, 7 states had seceded, and the Confederate States of America had been formally established with Jefferson Davis as its elected president. 1 month later, the American Civil War began, when Confederate forces under General P.G.T. Beauregard opened fire on Union-held Fort Sumter in South Carolina. In 1863, as the tide turned against the Confederacy, Lincoln emancipated slaves within the rebellious states and in 1864 won re-election. In April of 65, he was assassinated by Confederate sympathizer John Wilkes Booth at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. The attack came only 5 days after the American Civil War effectively ended with the surrender of Confederate General Robert E. Lee at Appomattox. Just rereading the highlights from the history there, because I was never a Civil War expert, but it really gets me what Lincoln accomplished. There's controversy over whether he was really against slavery, whether he was much more of a pragmatist. The more you study, the more you respect the great man, and if you ever get to Washington, D.C., you must see the memorial.
That is right.
Today is also the birth date in 1854, so right around that time, but a wee baby of John Philip Sousa, composer of much of the world's greatest and most beloved marches. For example, he wrote The Stars and Stripes Forever on Christmas Day of 1896. He also wrote the march Semper Fidelis, which is the motto, often abbreviated to Semper Fi, of the United States Marine Corps. I put links to several of the if you're not familiar with the martial music of John Philip Sousa, you absolutely must be. Of course, a lot of people know him for the Liberty Bell, which is the music that Monty Python appropriated for Monty Python's Flying Circus, but so many great Great compositions by John Philip Sousa. Also, a happy 34th birthday to actress Emma Stone, born on this date in 1988. I like to be able to celebrate somebody who is still alive, and in this case, still young. You know, if you like origin stories, I really enjoyed her appearance as Cruella de Vil.
Yes.
In the Disney live-action prequel to 101 Dalmatians.
That was very unexpected that we loved that movie.
It was surprisingly good.
Really good.
well, Emma Stone is a pretty amazing actress.
She is.
She has enormous presence, which is one of the reasons why I actually didn't care for the film La La Land. She was so good in it, and I found the film so tragic.
I know.
But
yes.
That said, there is a Cruella 2 coming. There is a sequel coming.
Is there now?
Yes.
That's awesome.
And we'll be talking about sequels tonight, so that's important. Today was also the end of daylight savings time. Yay! Except, no, not really.
No.
The Congress has actually had a bill to end it once and for all.
Yes.
And they keep carrying it over to the next. Nobody wants to take responsibility for ending this ridiculous practice once and for all. Now, I know there would be a lot of complications. But it can't be any worse than when they decided to change the date it changed.
Right.
This is going a few years back. I was still working in the IT field then, and we had to make sure all the computers got their patches for that.
Was it from October to November, or was it from September to November? I
think it was October to November.
Yeah.
Yeah, they moved it 3 or 4 weeks in the fall and then 1 week different in the spring.
Horrible.
I mean, go figure.
Horrible.
Could they eliminate it? No, let's micromanagement. So anyway, daylight saving time is over for now. That means the folks who watch the shows that I participate in during the week that are part of the Ayn Rand Center UK, United Kingdom, when they came off British summertime last weekend, everything's been out of sync. Now it's all back in sync. So that's good. It's also National Nacho Day. So I had to look that one up. National Nacho Day. It seems like the kind of simple and delicious food that would have been around forever, but I've found multiple sources confirming.
Yes, they had that during the very first Thanksgiving dinner with the Native Americans and the Englishmen.
One would have thought. But according to the sources and again, more than one source, although it makes you wonder, did one source put the story out and everybody else followed it? But no, it seems to be independently verified that any discussion of the history of nachos has to begin in the Mexican border town of Piedras Negras, just west of the Rio Grande, across which sits Eagle Pass, Texas. One day in 1943, now that's less than 100 years ago. Can you imagine nachos not being more than 100 years old? One day in 1943, the wives of U.S. soldiers stationed at Fort Duncan dropped in on a Piedras Negras, I gotta learn to roll my R's someday, hotspot called the Victory Club, and unfortunately the restaurant had closed for the day. Still, a manager named Ignacio Nacho Anaya decided to throw a dish together based on whatever ingredients he still had left. Among them, cheese and tortillas. Anaya sliced the fried tortillas into triangles, added some shredded cheddar and jalapeno peppers, and started the tradition which bears his name to this day. So happy Nachos Day. If you got them, eat them. I actually have got them, and we're going to have, or at least I'm going to have nachos for dinner tonight. I've already shredded lettuce, diced tomatoes. I've got ground beef already ready. You, on the other hand, Amy has been on an austerity program. I don't know.
That's right. I've been enjoying removing low nutrient foods from my plate in front of me to eat and feed my face. I don't do that anymore.
Yeah,
just don't do it anymore.
You could join me for, like, instead of the nacho cheese sauce, you could use a little shredded cheese. That's protein.
Well,
and I've got a lot of shredded lettuce and diced tomatoes. I would
have some, some ground beef or whatever that you made.
Ground beef is lean.
With just a whole bunch of veggies on top and with some cheese.
But no cheese sauce. Or chips.
No chips. Ugh.
Well, that's close enough to nachos. So happy Nachos Day, folks. Enjoy that. Finally, it's Happy National Saxophone Day.
Yes. Oh, I forgot to bring my saxophone. I play alto saxophone, everybody. I've done that since I was 15.
We didn't get the prop out there, but we've posted videos of Amy playing saxophone, including Christmas carols. We'll probably do another one this year.
I think so. I think we'll play some Christmas carols.
Last year you played drums and bass on Jingle Bell Rock. But
That's
maybe
right.
we can come up with something this year that you could use a saxophone on.
Yes, I want to do like medieval music, really medieval music.
Okay. Amy, gâteté, saxophone. Let's do
Yes,
that.
gâteté.
Okay. The old tunes will be Bach. So, yes, National Saxophone Day is actually celebrated on the birth date of Antoine-Joseph Adolphe Sax. Yes, the saxophone was named for a gentleman named Mr. Sax, and he was the inventor.
Yeah, and I believe he invented all of the other sax horns, hence the name. And he was an inventor, and he made all these wonderful instruments. And at the time, a lot of these orchestras just kind of blew him off and didn't want to have anything to do with his creations because, they were not classical instruments. So, FYI.
Oh, good. Jim says he did go to the Lincoln Memorial last time. He was in D.C. So, what are we listening to this week? Now, my list for what we're listening to this week is a little bit quirky. I'll be posting it right after the show into the description on YouTube as well as the show notes on Facebook. Because two of the elements that I've listed we haven't actually watched yet, but I am looking forward to watching and or hearing. The first thing I did write down was Weird, the Al Yankovic story. And I'm only mentioning it as a cautionary tale. For those of you who love Weird Al Yankovic, or just find him interesting and think the film will be good, I'm going to give you a spoiler because I wish I had received this spoiler before I saw the film. The original movie trailer for Weird, the Al Yankovic story was a Funny or Die skit.
Yeah.
And if you're not familiar with Funny or Die, they do short clips, short videos, funny videos, along the lines of like Nacho Punch or College Humor. These websites that just do funny videos. It started out as just a funny video. Somebody got the idea to take this parody, ironically, of a parody artist, and turn it into a feature-length film. Mm-hmm. Al Yankovic actually signed on and became the co-writer and co-producer.
Yes.
Point is, it's not a biopic.
It's a parody.
It's not even a funny take on a biopic. It is outrageous. And I'll leave it at that. I don't want to give you any spoilers.
Yeah. I'll just say that it's the subtitle to it should be How Millennials See the 80s.
That's true. The representation of the 1980s was one of the disappointments. Now, if you like those short, funny videos, I do have two of them in the show notes that you may have already seen. The first one is the trailer for the film Saving Daylight, which is not actually a film. It's a very funny trailer.
Yes, I remember that.
And if you can't wait for me to post the show notes, just look up Saving Daylight. It's the first thing that comes up. It's great. The other thing I thought of immediately when I thought of Funny or Die or College Humor, any of these short, funny videos was It's Not About the Nail.
Yes.
Link to that in the show notes as well if you think, well, I like short, funny clips that are also, smart and not just kind of hooligan like the Weird movie was. So anyway, those will be in the show notes as well. Anything exciting that you've been listening to or watching this week, Amy?
I actually watched, Robert and I kind of watched it separately, but it's the wonderful documentary with a lovely fellow who is in our audience right now, James Valiant, and along with his wonderful partner, Jim Fahey.
Warren Fahey.
Warren Fahey.
Yes.
They were part of this wonderful documentary called Creating Christ.
If you haven't yet had the opportunity to read the book,
yes,
Creating Christ by James Valiant and Warren Fahey, this is your chance to get a preview of it.
Yes.
To get it, what would you call it? The Cliff Notes version.
Exactly. It's a nice acclamation to the book, and there's a lot of information. I would say either go with the documentary or the book, either way, or you can check James Valiant out on one of the wonderful Myth Vision podcasts on YouTube, which is very, very good. Now, I don't really know that much about the Bible. I haven't actually never read it all the way through, either version. Strike me down, send me to hell. But I was able to grasp what they were laying down. I picked up what they were laying down, and it's good. Good stuff.
There's a temptation to say you shouldn't criticize a book you haven't read, but I don't feel a need to read the critiques, either the critique of pure reason or the critique of practical reason, by Immanuel Kant. Books which are about as thick as the Bible, if not as many pages or words. And I don't feel a need to reread the Bible from my Lutheran years. I believe I read it all the way through, but I may be misremembering that. I don't think you have to. I especially don't have to enjoy reading Creating Christ or watching this new documentary.
Yes.
It's on all the services. It's
Amazon Prime.
Yes, it is. But it's on all of it. It costs a few dollars. You have to buy it. Well worth, We spent that much money watching the first 20 or 30 minutes of a film called Kung Pao Enter the Fist. And I don't mean to be rude, because I think somebody recommended this to us, but
I apologize to whoever recommended that. It may have been Jim, I don't know, but
we only got 20 or 30 minutes out of it.
19 minutes and like 39 seconds or something.
It reminded me of the film Mafia with Christina Applegate, in that it was another film where we only got through 20 minutes out of it. In that case, we were actually in a movie theater, which is a little more disappointing if you walk out on a movie in a movie theater than if you try 20 minutes. We have a 20-minute rule for movies.
Yes.
If we're not sure we want to watch something,
give it 20 minutes. If we can get to that point, let's keep going. And Robert and I have this uncanny ability to like or dislike the same things.
We have a lot of overlap. So, bottom line, Creating Christ, much more worth watching for whatever it costs, $4.99, $3.99, than, I won't even say the names of those other movies because it was funny, but it's kind of rude too.
No.
Definitely.
I'll say that Kung Pao Enter the Fist, I think that's what it's called. If you can get your brain to kind of like be in the state of mind that you were when you were 12, then you might enjoy it.
I think you're trying to make it sound less rude, but that's actually making it more rude.
No, seriously. I remember when I was that age and I would turn on, Saturday Night Live or The Late Show or whatever it is, and I would just laugh and laugh and laugh. And because it didn't really matter what the content was, it was the timing. So I really enjoyed the comic timing.
Did you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good.
So anyway, I'll just say that.
Okay. Good.
And by the way, about the Weird Al parody biopic, I did laugh quite a bit in that.
It's got a few great moments.
Yes.
It's unfortunately a film where they took a few moments and tried to make a whole movie out of it.
Yes.
Bad idea. And probably the best part of it is, I don't want to give any spoilers, because the few good parts, I want them to surprise you if you decide to watch it.
Yes.
Yes. Now, I did actually do a few videos this week, so I will go ahead and self-promote. I did an episode of the Thursday show Life on Earth with Robert Nasir. So sad. It used to be Life on Earth with Robert and Amy.
Well,
I know. Amy is busy during the week, so.
I'm busy during the week, and I'm resurrecting GLOW, Great Lakes Subjectivists.
Oh, yes, I know. Busy days for Amy Nasir. So, anyway, I did an episode called On Gratitude and Abundance, Happy Thanksgiving of Life on Earth. Link to that will be in the show notes, or just go to my channel, youtube.com/Robert Nasir, where you find all of the creamy goodness that we produce. Also did an episode with James Valiant, author of Creating Christ, as well as The Passion of Ayn Rand Critics. We did an episode this week called Ask What You Can Do for Your Country. An ironic title, but why it was ironic, well, you'll have to listen to the episode. That was good as well. And finally, listed in the What Are We Watching or Listening To this week is Yaron Brook Show, Voting in the Midterms. Well, I put the link in there, but actually that show hasn't started yet. It won't start for another 35 minutes, but I am looking forward to watching that. Now,
yes,
because we're on a time crunch here, we got to do this whole show in less than 5 minutes. As usual, great human inventions by country. Great human inventions by country. What country do you guess has invented the most stuff? And obviously, this has got to be measured in a nuanced way, because some inventions are more important than others. Some countries have been around longer than others.
That's very true.
But what would be your guess for the country that has invented the most stuff? Let's see in the chat here. Has anybody guessed the country that has invented the most stuff?
Not yet. There might be a bit of a delay.
Well, Ian says he got it. Scotland wins, or at least Scottish people, of course. No, actually, it wasn't Scotland. Curiously enough, Apollo Zeus says Britain, and that is a very good guess, because I'm actually going from two lists here, but again, it's complicated depending on how you score things. And on the list that takes all of history into account, Great Britain does come in second. So that's pretty damn good.
Good job. Consolation prize.
Great Britain has a head start over the country that came in first, because they've existed a hell of a lot longer than these United States. Of course, the United States. Yay! Spoiler alert. Yes. Now, they were considering inventions throughout known history, going back to, ancient times and the first attempts to have running water and chamber pots and just the most basic stuff. So
I thought all of the inventions came out of the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages.
That's right. When the Catholics controlled the world. Didn't happen that way. Now, this is according to Wikipedia.
If you count the torture device inventions.
They were very inventive in that way. But I'm sure those were they gave credit to, whether it was Spain or Italy, depending on which Inquisition you're talking about. We always think of the Inquisition being the Italians, the Romans, the Catholic, but, nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. So those numbers are according to Wikipedia.com. This is a website. Obviously, the Wikipedia of Europe, they're biased. But that's cool, because they still realize that Great Britain is number 2. That sounds wrong when you say it like that. Sounds like the kind of joke that would have been in the Weird movie. According to World Population Review, and this was a list that was more skewed toward modern times and inventions that have had the biggest impact on modern times, it's interesting because number 1 was still the United States, but number 2 was Japan.
Oh, wow.
And the number 3 country in inventions that have impacted modern times was, and this one surprised me until I remembered, Samsung and Kia and Hyundai, and what South Korea looks like these days.
Yes.
There's no other explanation for Seoul, South Korea, other than the fact that they are number 3 in the list of countries that have been the most innovative, or at least have had the most inventions in modern times.
Good for them.
Yes. Now, the reason why I find the earlier list compelling is that the United States ain't been around that long. Mm-hmm. And especially in the modern United States, modern times. It's amazing to me that if you do a search of gross national product, GNP, the United States has always come in first, for the last 100 years. And that's amazing, because it's the new world. It's a newer country. How did we outpace everybody else? Now,
I know, but I'll tell you later.
Well, I'm talking about gratitude this week.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about gratitude on the Thursday show. I've been on Clubhouse, that crazy audio platform, in all these gratitude groups, and I've been hearing what people are grateful for. And it got me thinking, because of the way James Valiant and I talked about, and the way I talked about it on Thursday, it got me thinking of the link between gratitude and greatness. Because some people think of gratitude as a form of weakness. If you are thankful all the time, it makes you subservient to the people you're thankful to. Well, my motto, we're surrounded by miracles. And by miracles, I mean the products of the division of labor and economies of scale and trade. And what that means is that I'll point at the camera, I'll do the rude thing, everybody listening to this right now, you are part of the miracle. Because those people you're trading with are just people like you, who are out there doing their best, just like you're out there doing your best. You are part of the miracle. So I did a search for gratitude and greatness, and the results were only so-so, which leads me to believe I need to write an essay on the topic.
I think you should.
Yeah. So, this discussion tonight is my head start on that. Psychology Today did have a piece on gratitude and sensitivity, how they can lead to greatness. See, doesn't that sound like my kind of thing? I'm like,
Yeah.
Click that. Oh, yeah.
Sounds good.
But that was disappointing because in the end, the greatness they're referring to is kind of the generalized sense of like great things happening. Great things result from gratitude and sensitivity. And that's fine. I'm not cutting that down. But what I've got in mind is greatness. Personal self-improvement, self-development, self-mastery. Greatness. So that's got to happen. So I'd like to take a moment and consider the connection of gratitude, thankfulness, because it's November. It's Thanksgiving month. This is going to be a theme for me all month. I've been doing gratitude exercises on social networks. If you haven't been following me on Facebook, I've finally started my 3 good things, and those are posted as well. So I want to consider the connection of gratitude to not just specific values or deeds or things we do, but virtue. Specifically, the 7 virtues of Atlas Shrugged. I don't need to tell most of the people in this audience what the 7 virtues of Atlas Shrugged are, but I have linked to the Ayn Rand lexicon entry for virtue.
Mm-hmm.
So what has gratitude got to do with rationality?
Well, first let me say that the 7 virtues, rationality is really the top virtue, or the source from which all the other virtues, including the ones that are not listed, spring from.
Yes.
So that's using reason. That's being reality based. That's being so you can kind of see that honesty is part of that. You can kind of see where integrity comes out of using reason. And just ask yourself, how does independence and justice and projectiveness and pride derive from using reason? And Ayn Rand, of course, spells it out very, very well, very perfectly in John Galt's speech. But what about gratitude?
Well, rationality. If you are a rational person, if you are reality-based and using logic as your method, in other words, if you're just not following your whims, your feelings, whatever you feel like, fuzzy logic, fuzzy thinking, then it stands to reason that when you trade with people, you do so because you receive more than you give. Yaron Brook makes that point with his iPhone, that when he buys an iPhone for $1,000, the phone's worth a lot more than $1,000 to him. Otherwise, he wouldn't make the trade. And the $1,000 is worth more than the phone is to the folks at Apple. Otherwise, they wouldn't make the sale. No, trade is rational. But it's that extra that you get. It's that I get to trade my dollars, which were hard won, but to trade them for things that are worth much more than the money. And trade is rational. Trade is logical. You do these things for good, compelling reasons. Ayn Rand would say you don't trade a lesser value, a higher value for a lesser value. That would be a sacrifice. And everything about those kinds of exchanges of values, value itself, requires a rational approach. A lot of people want to say values are subjective. You can't connect an is to an ought. I think we all know better than that.
Right.
Well, what about honesty? How does honesty tie to gratitude or thankfulness? Well, you owe people the truth for your own sake. You don't tell people the truth because it's better for them. Turns out it is. But when you exchange information, when you interact with people, when you have honest relationships with people, I've always said other people in the world are the second highest value in the world, the second best thing out there. And I love iPhones, and I love my car, and I love my computers, and that I love my guitars. But all of that is secondary to the people in my life. And those honest relationships with people, the fact that when I talk to people, I don't deal with the kind of people who lie. I don't have to worry about hidden messages. I don't have to worry there's something else going on there. And they don't have to worry about that from me. And I am enormously grateful for that. and I've cultivated and fostered those kinds of relationships. Same thing with integrity. When you act in accordance with what you really believe, and I say integrity is what you do when nobody's watching. Well, the heck with that. Integrity is what you do for your own sake. Live according to what you actually believe is true. See, I am thankful to myself, and that's why I say we are surrounded by miracles, not least of which is ourselves. And if you are trading with people, if you are putting your dollars out there in exchange for the amazing things that we get back, that means you are just as much a part of that miracle. You are part of the exchange of values. You got to look in the mirror and say, oh my God, I am grateful for my own virtues. In my case, I am grateful to past Robert Nasir, who has built the character of present Robert Nasir. Independence. How does independence connect to gratitude? That's a tougher one. What do you think?
Well, I mean, you have independence of mind, your thoughts, and independence of action. And, every time we're talking about this, I think, especially with regard to gratitude, that basically more or less implies relationships with other people. When you are independent and you're true to yourself and you are, your actions derive from the honesty that you hold and your integration of the ideas that you hold.
Ooh.
It's sort of like the Ayn Rand quote, the greatest gift that one can give to another is the sight of an achievement.
Yes.
So when you achieve something, when you act in a way that is courageous or independent, other people are seeing that, and that is a gift to them if they will accept it. So,
that's so good.
Everything that you're talking about here is spiritual trade when you're talking about gratitude within relationships.
See, I had immediately thought of the opposite, the negative, because when we talk about independence, it's easy to think of the fountainhead Howard Roark being first-handed, not second-handed, but that immediately takes me to Atlas Shrugged. Think of Henry Reardon at Thanksgiving dinner with his family, and his mother saying, "Henry, you've never been thankful for anything."
All I can remember, the visual representation of that whole scene was the shoe.
The shoe.
The shoe in the middle of the table. The drooling cornucopia of the shoe. Ugh.
Yes.
How horrible.
So yes, independence and gratitude.
Her non-material tiara that she's wearing.
Imagine. It's funny because Hank Reardon gives his family so many opportunities.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, he tells them right up until the end, I would have forgiven you if you had just told me to quit and leave. So many chances for them, but of course there was nothing redeemable about them. So of course it would have been the easiest thing in the world to redeem themselves, and they never in a million years could have done it. Shouldn't give too many spoilers there. Justice? Well, justice and gratitude are two sides of the same coin. It's why we are grateful is because we don't take things for granted.
No.
Because we respect the values that we get.
Jimmy Valiant is on Facebook here, and he says,
yes.
If anger is the appropriate emotional response to injustice, then gratitude is the appropriate emotional response to virtue.
Okay, he just said it way better than I. This is why we love James Valiant. Yes. Well, it's one of the reasons.
Bravo.
Is that he's just wicked smart and so insightful.
So insightful.
Well, you took care of that for me. And then productiveness. Productiveness is, when I talk about the division of labor, when I talk about economies of scale, when I talk about what it means to live in a society of producers, and I know the bad guys are out there, and I know the parasites are out there, they're ballast. They don't count. Protect yourself against them. Put locks on your doors. Do whatever you've got to do. Vote on Tuesday. That'll be totally useless, but it's good for your character.
It's good. It's good to vote.
I advocate voting.
Much.
I really do.
I advocate voting.
I just have a little different view of why you should vote.
Well, going back to the idea of justice and what James said, in terms of it being a spiritual trade.
Yes.
When somebody's acting rotten towards you, they're giving you a negative value. Well, give them a negative value back. It needs to be even Steven on that.
That's right. And I've said before, sometimes you need to punish them. Sometimes you need to let other people know about them. But a lot of times, all you have to do is show them your back and get them the hell out of your life. So you do what is most just to you.
Yeah, show them that what they're doing is not acceptable.
Yes. Absolutely. And finally, and I'm going to return to this theme, what has gratitude got to do with pride? And I know it sounds strange to talk about gratitude to oneself, but if it's true that you should treat yourself as well as anybody else that you care about, that you should be as good to yourself as you are to the people you love, then there is nothing more important than to exercise the virtue, not the value of pride, that's self-esteem, but the virtue of pride, that moral ambitiousness. And when you put that out there, when you put yourself out there, and you get some of it back, and believe me, eventually, if you're doing it right, you will. I think pride. I love the idea that I get to trade the best of what I've got to offer with the people out there. And it is my pride that I can do that. And it is my gratitude and thankfulness that it all comes back to me.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of a conversation we recently had with our friend Emily from the podcast. What is it called?
Emily Talks.
Yes. And I shared with her, because we were talking about aphorisms, and I think of, pride in a certain way in terms of aphorisms, in terms of giving yourself that affirmation, that those words to use to integrate and feel and understand the love that you have for yourself and the caring that you have for yourself. And so my aphorism was, I'm a good person to be around. and I kept thinking about that actually while I was alone in the shower and everything, and I'm like, I'm a good person to be around, and I it just felt more psychologically real, a little bit more tangible than just saying I'm a good person, la 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 la. But saying I'm a good person to be around means that I'm out in the world, that I'm around other people, that I'm around myself. And you know what I enjoy, because I thought about this recently, is that when I was a kid, the one wonderful trait that I had, out of many, I'm sure, was that I really enjoyed being around myself. I liked being alone because I could kind of create my own world. I could talk to the mirror. I could talk to my stuffed animals. I know that sounds kind of sad, but no, it was a real positive experience for me, seeing that I was very shy.
My suspicion is that resonates with a lot of the folks who are listening right now.
Yes, I would suspect that too. And good for us. So be a good person to be around. Yes.
Yes. So I'm going to continue this, not right now.
Emily says, I'm great company. Yes.
And I have no doubt about that. I am going to continue this throughout the week coming up. Writing this essay may even result in another podcast episode, or it might just end up being a Substack post, or if it's real short, a Facebook post. But no, I think I've got a lot to say about that. But I'm going to wrap it up here. My encouragement for you.
Yeah, do I have a few minutes?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I know you had some interesting notes, because we were talking about how there's so much to be grateful for in the world.
Yes.
And as people in the United States, we're just, again, surrounded by this stuff.
Yes, make America grateful again.
Make America grateful again.
And I'm going to transport all of us, just like the time zone change, back to 1831.
1831.
When the French government had Alexis de Tocqueville come to the United States and learn of all things about the American penitentiaries, which was not exactly why Alexis was here. He was here to study everything, social, cultural, political, philosophical, societal, about America. And his purpose was basically, he wanted to understand the true nature of American political life and why it was so different from Europe. And I read this book when I was about 15 years old, and I don't remember too much of it. I just remember that I thoroughly enjoyed it. And there's a particular quote that I picked out that has a lot to do with what Robert's talking about being grateful, and being having gratitude towards the fact that we live in a society where we have free association, and we can trade with one another. We can spiritually trade with one another. We can learn about Ayn Rand and her virtues, and we can use those to better our lives. And he says this. Now, his book was called Democracy in America, or technically On Democracy in America. And it has so many gems in it. I highly recommend reading it. And he's talking about democracy. And when he talks about that, he doesn't just mean about voting. He basically kind of uses that term as an umbrella for constitutional republic and kind of our way of life, and the separation of church and state, which was really important at the time, and the kind of the universal suffrage idea, the idea that everybody as an adult can vote, whatever race you are, whatever gender you are. And so here's his quote: "In democracies, nothing is more great or more brilliant than commerce. It attracts the attention of the public and fills the imagination of the multitude. All energetic passions are directed towards it." Just think about that for a moment. It's such a brilliant quote. Nothing is more great or more brilliant than commerce. It attracts the attention of the public and fills the imagination of the multitude. All energetic passions are directed towards it. And in a summary of the book, of the last part of the book, and Democracy in America, he talks about the importance of free association. The summary was: Americans have a happy impulse to work together to improve their common life, most obviously by forming voluntary associations. This uniquely American art of association tempers their tendencies basically, being individualistic, and gives them the habit of working with others. So, so there's a lot of information in Democracy in America. I think that some people interpret the book a little bit differently, as you can imagine. But there are so many wonderful quotes. Unfortunately, a lot of the quotes that I found were a little bit negative in their prescience with regard to how things might actually go and how things might go wrong in the future. But yeah, that one wonderful quote that I just mentioned was really excellent. It really describes, what Alexis de Tocqueville saw when coming here. And there's one more thing that I want to say. This is regarding the separation of church and state.
Ooh.
And this is actually part of it's from an article by a guy named Ed Simon, and includes quotes from de Tocqueville. He says, he understood that the greatest aid for faith was removing it from its position of direct political power.
Ooh.
Noting that, quote, religion cannot share the material strengths of the rulers without suffering some of those animosities which the latter arouse. Unquote. This was a lesson well understood in Tocqueville's America. When the Frenchman would inquire as to the reasons for such spiritual vibrancy in the New World as opposed to Europe at the time, Americans, quote, mainly attributed the peaceful dominion of religion in their country to the separation of church and state. Which is really interesting, and it's very interesting for me that this is so antithetical to what a lot of the Christian conservative Republicans are saying, and something that they need to be knocked in the head with. That if they want a thriving religious culture, they need to keep it away from politics and the government, because otherwise, if you end up establishing one religion that's favored in the realm of government, you're going to suppress all the others, and religion itself is going to or I should say the prevalence of religion, or the prevalence of people to be free to choose what ideas they want to hold, is going to suffer. So anyway, it's just an interesting little, I just had to put that in.
Excellent. It's interesting, too, that we call Alexis de Tocqueville, and we refer to him as de Tocqueville. But we don't call Cyrano de Bergerac, which, of course, just means of Bergerac. De Tocqueville is of Tocqueville, for sure, but we don't call him Alexis. Don't know why, but in the chat, had a couple of interesting comments. It's hard for me to keep up with the chat when I'm talking, so I get to catch up while you are. And where was it here? Oh, that's funny. Apollo Zeus says, but it doesn't require money creating Christ. I wonder why I had to pay for it. I don't know. I didn't mind at the time, so I didn't think much of it. Maybe it is free out there, or at least part of the paid service.
Different in the UK.
Yeah, and we had an interesting question from Jim Ashley, which I think we might have time for. He says, when I was to catch a plane at SeaTac for Ocon 2019, my cousin in Seattle offered to take me to the airport, which I was grateful for. At the very last minute, she backed out of that offer, and I had to take a cab. By that time, well, it was too late. I missed my flight. I caught another flight, but I almost didn't make it in time for the start of the conference. I am not grateful to my cousin for that. How does one confront someone who essentially broke a promise like that? Now, we did a whole episode on forgiveness.
Sure.
And we know that rational forgiveness, to rationally forgive someone, there are three elements.
Yes.
First, the person needs to acknowledge what they did wrong. Second, they need to offer recompense wherever that's possible. Sometimes it's not really something they can make up for. And third, they need to commit to not doing it again. Mm-hmm. And you can usually tell if they're committed by the way that they apologize.
Yes.
If they don't make excuses, if they fully explain that they get it, they understand what they did. So I would, it depends on the context and the person and what we're talking about, but in this kind of situation, I would simply explain what that meant, that they backed out at the last minute. And, both abstractly in terms of trust and what it did to your schedule, and then specifically what that actually did to you. If it's possible, you could ask if she'd like to make it up to you.
Yes.
Not that she can drive you to the airport again, but, if there's something special that you need.
Always offer that. Always offer that, because if that person is a good person, they will jump on that idea and absolutely, they will be so grateful to you for that opportunity.
And if they're not a very good person, then this is, in a way, I will use the metaphor, it's a gift that they've given you.
Yeah,
and that is the gift of knowledge, mm-hmm. of knowing, oh, this is a person I can't trust.
Yeah.
So, maybe if they show up at Thanksgiving, I can trust them not to poison the food. But if I need to rely on them for something important, no, this is not the person to go to.
Right. Exactly. And that's okay. What, everybody's on their own journey.
I don't know if it's okay,
but I mean, it depends on your relationship with the person. How much of a betrayal it was. Do you know this person that well? Yeah. And I recently had an opportunity to confront a friend with asking them, why they were so poopy during a certain
Somebody
situation.
did you wrong?
Yeah.
Oh.
And this person, I was so grateful to this person because this person went into what they were thinking, the whole context. Thank you for the whole context, and now I understand what went wrong. And I would say also approach any sort of situation like that with an I statement. I saw you do this. I'm interpreting this as being wrong, and it really inconvenienced me. It caused me to miss a flight. It caused me to almost miss my conference. Show them what it did to you, because that's important information. But don't go in and say, you dirty rat, you did this to me. You. Don't try to use I statements. There you are. That's my suggestion.
Yes. So, and again, we did a whole episode on forgiveness. And, sometimes you just don't forgive. And again, you use that information going forward. But yeah, as Amy says, a lot of the conversational techniques, sort of the conversational version of passive voice, which can be weak, but it can also be a great method of breaking through.
Yes.
Now, we're getting near the top of the hour. I don't want to run into Yarn's time, so I'm going to jump right to the Post-it note of the week. I have a Post-it note of the week. It says, be the miracle. What did I say? We're surrounded by miracles, not least of which is ourselves. And this month, I'm pointing out, we have a role in that. All the things that come to us are coming from other people out there doing their best to produce and trade. Well, that means if we are producing and we are trading, we are part of the miracle. So that's why my Post-it note for the week says, be the miracle. Now, if that sounds too woo, because I did get accused of woo a couple of weeks ago, and I'm still working on that. I was grateful for the accusation because it means I get to clarify something. But if that sounds too woo, I do have another Post-it note here that just says, produce and trade. And that makes you part of the miracle. So yes, produce and trade. And
Good.
There is that. My homework for the week is to continue with the homework I started last week. Gratitude exercises. If you follow me on Facebook, facebook.com/Robert Nasir, you have already seen a couple days worth of those, and I'm going to keep it going. I'm using the 3 good things format, although those can be more than just things to be grateful for. They are things that were of value, that made you happy, gave you some joy. So I will be doing that as well. Where are we at here? I've got a minute and a half to say, if you want to support the show, go to robertnasir.com, become a patron. We had one of our patrons re-sign on. He had actually let his patronage lapse due to it turned out to be a logistics issue. Very grateful for that. Thank you for coming on board. Anybody else got any extra money in your pocket? Please help us out and hold up my cardboard sign. Oh, sorry, that's a reference to the shows I did earlier this week. But if you would like to become patrons or make a one-time contribution using PayPal, go to Robert Nasir. Everybody hates PayPal these days. Become a patron. Go to robertnasir.com. You'll find both ways there, as well as other ways to get in touch with us. Follow us, follow the show, send messages, do all that good stuff. And thank you. My gratitude, heart is beating loud. My gratitude is for you. Those of you who still join us. We have 280 subscribers. We need more, so like the share the show if you can. We have produced over 200 videos, counting the more light and entertaining stuff, over 250 videos, and we're looking at amping it up. I love the fact that we have 280 subscribers. I love the regular listeners and those of you in the chat. But we're going to work on this. We're going to make some shorter videos to reach a larger audience. We're going to keep going with the long format content as well. Good things are in the future, and I am thankful in advance for that. Thank you for joining us. As always, we wish you success. We wish you flourishing. We have 5 seconds to say, we wish you love.